going on? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show on DRF TV. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. This is the preview edition, a little bit different than a normal week. Won't be going over any racing because I'm running the ship for Out of the Gate this week with Illman and Beer off. So rather than rehash some of these races for the third time, including the stakes previews, it's a good opportunity to go have some listener-viewer interaction. Past two pods, I've asked for some feedback from you guys. I've got a fair amount of responses. Thank you for offering those up. I'll go over about 5 of them here in this preview pod. Who knows how long this is going to go. Could be as short as 15 minutes, could be as long as a half hour or longer. So we'll just kind of take it as it comes and see how things go. However you listen, thank you for doing so. YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. Questions, comments, concerns beneath the video player on YouTube or directly to me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Let's start with kind of the big one that a few people have touched on, and I think the timing of it all fits quite well because just about a half an hour ago, as I'm recording this on Thursday afternoon, the Breeders' Cup, the board members, they unanimously voted to keep the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita. And I got a few different questions from different folks. We'll begin with one from Ruben Delgado. His question or thought or whatever you want to call it was, what's your honest opinion on the situation at Santa Anita? As far as, and I'm just reading this verbatim, as far as what would you do to fix the problem or problems? Or if you can't answer that question, do you think the Breeders' Cup should have a universal location? If it was me, build a brand new site, call it Las Vegas Park, only used for Breeders' Cup. Thanks, Matt. Kind of piggybacking on that, Nancy Moran, she was curious about the Jerry Hollendorfer situation in Santa Anita and my thoughts there. There are some things that I will touch on and some things that I won't touch on. Keep in mind, I am not a reporter. When I do, despite what I do with NBC, if I have to do an interview or I have to do a report, you guys that know me and listen to this and have paid attention for the 5 years that I've been involved in this stuff, I'm not a reporter. I'm a handicapper. So my job is to offer opinions, not necessarily be reporting news. But at the same time, I feel like this is a topic where the area, it's a little bit gray because it's something that we all have to acknowledge as horse players and fans and things of that nature. So the way that I look, my honest opinion of the Santa Anita thing, Santa Anita, I think it's been a disaster since basically the meet opened, and as we're recording this, obviously, the meet closed last weekend. I think it's hard to argue any other way that it hasn't been a nightmare. I don't know the details as far as the surface. I don't know if that's genuinely what the issue is or if it's an issue of horses training or running that shouldn't be running. I know some people have looked at it and said all of these knee-jerk sort of reactions from the Stronach group are just sort of, they're not really addressing the problem, and now look, anything that jurisdictions and groups are doing to improve the quality of the life for the horses is first and foremost. I mean, let's be honest. Again, I've said for years now, without the horses, there is no game. So you better damn sure make the horses are well taken care of. And whether it's accurate or not, the public perception in recent months has been that the horses are not first and foremost for the groups in Southern California. I don't personally believe that is the case. I think most everyone involved genuinely has the horse's best interest in mind. I'm sure there are those handful of bad apples and people that are in it for other reasons, but whatever side it is and whatever the truth is, the message that's out there is that the horses aren't being taken care of and X, Y, and Z. Now, how do you go about fixing it? This is probably going to be a very unpopular statement. And it's not, look, I've heard so many different sides of it where, injuries happen on any kind of surface and whatever it may be. I know that dirt is at its core kind of an American thing, running on dirt. I know they do it in Dubai. I know they do it in a few different places. But for the most part, the vast majority of the world, I know Japan runs on dirt as well. But it feels like, turf it feels like what horses are supposed to be running on. If I had it my way, we would only have turf. But I recognize that's not realistic. for weather reasons and just because, we've seen what happens at certain places when you run on grass for ungodly amounts of months on end. The grass is a disaster. So you need to have at least one other surface or one other track. I would seriously think about putting synthetic back in. And I'm sure I can already read some of the comments. Some of the trolls especially are going to be going to town on it. But for a number of reasons, I just think when weather is crummy, the synthetic for the most part handles it. And I think there needs to be different, I saw Craig Milkowski and Paul Matisse discussing this earlier in the week on Twitter. I do think there needs to be variations of the synthetic sort of rating. I don't think it's always fast. I mean, if a deluge comes rolling through, you can still run on it, but I don't believe it's the same surface that you'd be running on in the middle of a 75 degrees sunny, beautiful day. But to me, synthetic is an option where not only for cold weather, but for inclement weather, and if the turf course needs a breather, and all those sorts of things. And again, there are plenty of studies out there that you can go through and you can research on your own. There's too many things. I'm not going to go through and do the deep dive into that. But you've heard that from a fatality standpoint, synthetic is safer than dirt. I've heard the argument the other way that there are just as many injuries. They are just different types of injuries as opposed to what you see on the on dirt. Again, I'm not a horseman. I don't know enough about that. From a handicapping standpoint, would it be a bit of I don't want to call it a nightmare, but would it be an added challenge? Absolutely. Because, I mean, look, I know I'm not alone. Synthetic has never been the kind of surface for me. I enjoy playing Woodbine. But when Keeneland had synth, I didn't do particularly well there. Hollywood Park didn't do particularly well there when they were still running. And keep in mind, when I first got into the game, Southern California was nothing but synthetic. That's all it was. I never saw those tracks with dirt. I didn't really start seriously paying attention until probably 09 or 10. Zenyatta and Rachel in 09. So I would seriously consider the idea of bringing back synthetic tracks. I think that would appease the public sort of reaction. I think that would kind of quiet that a little bit. Now keep in mind, this is also coming from someone who, I make no bones about it, I would much, much, much rather watch turf racing than dirt racing. Dirt racing to me is relatively boring. For the most part, speed is good. Turf, I think there are more variables. I think there are more things that go into it. Dirt is just, it's fine. It is what it is. But synthetic would be something that I would seriously consider. Piggybacking on some of these other pieces here. The Jerry Hollendorfer aspect from Nancy Moran's comment. Again, I don't know all the details. I don't know all the instances and reasons. It feels like a reactionary move. Without knowing, again, I can't stress that enough, without knowing all of the specifics, because I'm not a reporter and I'm not privy to any of that stuff. I'm on the far East Coast and they're all the way out on the West Coast. I know that Los Alamitos is welcoming Hollendorfer. I know that Naira is welcoming Hollendorfer. I can't, it's a delicate thing to be touching on. I don't want to say that the folks in Southern California are just making Hollendorfer out as the scapegoat, or is there something to it? I don't know enough about it. And sure, everyone's going to have an opinion, but I think the way I approach not just this kind of thing, but so many different things, it's not always so crystal clear or so straightforward. Whether it's something silly like horse racing, or it's real life things, real important, real world things. It's not always black and white. We may like it to be. I mean, I know I'd love it to be black and white. It's either yes or no, but there's so many different gray areas that can affect that. Again, I don't know enough about the situation where there are a number of vet problems. Obviously we know about that last horse that broke down for Hollendorfer. Was a vet scratch earlier or the week prior. So, I mean, that's not a great look. And I don't know if that was a trend of things leading to that point. Or if it's a sort of I don't want to say a knee-jerk reaction, because It's been going on for a while, and they've been taking some heat. But was this a move from the Stronach Group to or Southern California in general? For the most part, again, I can't say that because Los Alamitos is going to welcome him. The Stronach Group and potentially the folks at Del Mar, if they do not extend the open invite to Hollendorfer, is them making an example of a big name. Again, a bit of a polarizing topic to me. As far as should the Breeders' Cup have a universal location, I have said for a long, long time, and it was before the you-know-what hit the fan over the past 6 months, I think Santa Anita should be the permanent home of the Breeders' Cup. The Triple Crown is contested on the East Coast, up and down the East Coast. The European, and this is a big piece for me, the European folks that come over here, the horsemen, it seems like they all have nothing but good things to say about Santa Anita, particularly about their turf course. And that's an important piece. If you want this to be an international thing, and everyone does, you need to make sure that everyone else thinks that it's a good venue. The synthetic thing would certainly appeal to a broader audience. You would get many more international horses to come over here. Would that level the playing field? Probably. And it is something, too, for me. The Breeders' Cup Classic. Is the Breeders' Cup Classic really the best race in the world? You know, I know, and I'm just throwing that out there. It's an open-ended sort of question because I know some people that are diehard American racing fans would say, absolutely, it's a stupid question. Why are you even asking it? But somebody like me who prefers turf racing over dirt racing, and I go, well, you know, the best turf horses are generally in Europe. The best race in Europe for older horses is the Arc de Triomphe. You know, is it a fair comparison? Then when we see one of their good turf horses try the dirt track over here, and more often than not they run up the track, it's just, you know, they weren't that good anyway. Well, that's not really a fair assessment. This is a very touchy, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer in this spot. This whole topic, this whole Santa Anita piece. I hope everything goes well. I hope they continue to do their due diligence and try to make things right, especially knowing that the Breeders' Cup's not going anywhere. There are other added layers to this thing now too, though. I mean, if Jerry Hollendorfer has a horse that is Breeders' Cup caliber, is he now not allowed to run in the Breeders' Cup because it's at Santa Anita? These are all logistical things that need to get ironed out in time. And, we can say it's still a ways away. It ain't that far away. We're coming up on turn of the calendar over to July here pretty quick. I mean, you're dealing with, 4 months to really get your house in order? It's a fascinating conversation. I feel I'm beaten down by having to explain to folks, just casual folks, friends and family, what the hell's going on out there, because I don't have a good answer for them. I think all we can do is just fingers crossed and hope that the powers that be get their house in order, because you're going to have all the world's eyes on you just in a few short months, and God forbid something bad happens. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't know how clear and concise that was for any of you listening. I hope you still are. It was more of just a ramble, but it's a difficult situation, and I'm sure some people, and yes, I have to be careful about certain things that I say given the position that I'm in. But I hope for everyone's sake, everything goes off without a hitch, and we have a good, clean Breeders' Cup. So hopefully that answered a little bit of the question, Ruben and Nancy. Now we'll move on to Alex Kibrick's question here in a moment. I'm going to combine a couple of comments here. One from Alex Kibrick and one from B. Clark. Alex's comment, think Mr. Money becomes a factor in BCC if he runs big in the Haskell. B. Clark's comment and question, do any odds intrigue you for Breeders' Cup Classic or Distaff Future Pools? Also, what is your favorite track you have visited? Great work. Love the show. Thank you to both of you for the responses. Let's start off with Mr. Money. Mr. Money is a horse that I initially felt correct about my assessment of him, and then I felt incorrect about it because I thought all along when you watched his runs in Louisiana rounding the far turn, he would make these giant moves and he just couldn't sustain that bid. And I thought maybe he was that one-turn type. You turn him back, he's going to run well. I picked him second in the Pat Day Mile, toyed with putting him on top. Dummy me. I should have done that instead of picking Dumpf on top. He goes out there and puts the boots to the field. Then they bring him back in the Matt Winn when I was down there a couple weeks ago, and I just said, I'm not totally sure that he's a two-turn horse. I think he's going to be much better at one turn. And he waxed that field. So if he all of a sudden comes back and he runs well in the Haskell, he becomes very interesting going forward. He certainly does. In a division that is clear as mud, Mr. Money is a horse that is trending the right direction. I would like to see one more big effort from him going 2 turns. So he doesn't need to win the Haskell, but I'd like to see one more really strong effort from him, threaten Maximum Security, threaten whoever else shows up in the Haskell, and show that, 2 turns is his game. Because if he runs a little bit dull there, you already have a beautiful built-in next spot for him. The H. Allen Jerkins at 7/8 of a mile. I don't want to put him in that race just yet because he could certainly end up running in a race like the Travers. But for me right now, I want to see what Mr. Money does in the Haskell. If he runs really, really well, I'll buy into that idea wholeheartedly that he is a 2-turn horse and he could be an interesting longer price in the Breeders' Cup Classic. If he runs a little bit dull or he runs the way that he did in Louisiana, puts in a bid, can't sustain it, I'll go back to my initial thought that, you were right. He is a one-turn kind of horse as opposed to going longer. Now, going to B. Clark's question or comment, talking about the Classic and the distaff pools. I'm pulling up Bovada right now. And I have made one wager down the road, and I won't tell you through what book or whatever it is. But it's the Breeders' Cup turf. Knowing that it'll be run at Santa Anita, we're going to get firm turf. I don't know if 1.5 miles is really his game, but I have made no bones about it, how big a fan I am of Robert Bruce. And I got Robert Bruce at 50 to 1. So I'm going to roll with that. Bit of a flyer, but I feel like if he gets to that point, and he's probably better at 1.25 miles, but I think 1.5 miles is an interesting spot for him. Firm turf in Southern California. Robert Bruce is interesting to me. I made that play at 50 to 1. Some other horses, though, if you're looking at the Breeders' Cup Classic, now I'm on Bovada looking at these numbers. I see Maximum Security at 7 to 1. That does nothing for him. And McKenzie at 8, absolutely not. Game Winner at 10. I'm interested in Game Winner. I don't know that 10 is really appetizing to me at this point. He's got a hell of a lot to prove before I would want 10 to 1 on him on the day of the race, let alone 4 months in advance. Same goes for Omaha Beach. Omaha Beach I'm getting more and more interested in, though, as more time goes by and we see these 3-year-olds run more. Because it feels like if he can just get healthy and back to the races, he's going to be a player. Thunder Snow at 10. And Catholic Boy at 16. Those are the two, and I said it last week when I went over my Breeders' Cup Classic top 10 list. They're 1 and 2 for me. So 10 to 1 and 16 to 1. 16 to 1, especially on Catholic Boy, if he does what I think he's going to do going forward, 16 to 1, you might look back on this and say he's going to be a third of that price. It'd be 5 to 1. Keep in mind, he was, for a little while, down at Churchill last year, before post time, he was the favorite. He opened up as the favorite for the Classic as a 3-year-old. I think he's getting a little bit overlooked here. Again, don't know that 16 is a number that I'd bite on this early, but Catalina Cruiser to me is very, very fascinating. He's polarizing. He's 20 to 1. He's a horse to me that could go one of two ways, where you make the bet at 20 to 1. He proves that he's not a 2-turn horse, and okay, you just blew that money. And I know some people don't like futures because you don't want to have your money held for so long. Totally respect that. Totally get it. And on the flip side, if he goes out there and he really impresses and struts his stuff at longer distances, 20 to 1, that could end up looking like a bargain because he could be another one of those horses that ends up dropping precipitously as far as the odds are concerned as we get closer and closer. As far as the distaff is concerned, I don't know. I mean, I think certain prices are intriguing, but intriguing doesn't do enough for me to really... I need more than intriguing to really go and make a play. Monomoy Girl at 4 to 1. Sounds like she's trending the right direction to get back to the races. Guarana at 9 to 2. Guarana looks like a freak, but I don't know if, so it's a short price to take in a horse that's run 2 times. She's looked great doing it, but I still want to see a little bit more from her. Midnight Bisou at 6. she probably should be the favorite based on what she's done so far this year. She should be the shortest price. I'm still not sold on her at 1.125 miles. Bellafina at 7, another one distance. Don't know if I'm totally sold on that, but it's a home game for Bellafina this year at Santa Anita. And late at 9, I guess, is a little bit interesting. I'm still not convinced she is what she once was, but it's an instance where you could see on her best day, maybe she's won, and at 9-1 is worth taking a flyer on. But as far as those two divisions, I don't see anything super spectacular or super interesting to me. I do like the idea of Robert Bruce at 50-1 if I'm going to take a flyer, because I think he is a much better horse on firm turf. I think he could have threatened bricks and mortar in the Manhattan had he been able to get out earlier. And you're almost assured firm turf at Santa Anita at the beginning of November. 1.5 miles might not be his game, but 1.25 miles definitely works for him. Unfortunately, the Breeders' Cup's at 1.5 miles, the turf. But point being, he should get a more suitable setup this year's Breeders' Cup as opposed to last year's Breeders' Cup. He would be one. If you're looking for just kind of a wild card, maybe Robert Bruce at 50-1 for the Breeders' Cup turf. Realized I forgot to answer one part of those questions. Favorite track that I've been to, I've always loved Santa Anita. Saratoga will always be first and foremost for me just because it was the first track I went to. It's geographically closest to where I grew up. In the western part of Massachusetts. And another track, sneaky though, that I've been to basically all of them with the exception of Arlington. I hear that Arlington, all the big ones I should say. I hear Arlington's beautiful. I haven't been able to get out there yet. Sneaky, one of my favorites is Woodbine. I love Woodbine. Great time, great people up there. And I love it. It looks, I'm trying to think, and I don't know how the dimensions match up with Belmont Park, but when you get to a certain vantage point and you look, that turf course goes on for forever and a day. It's a monstrosity. It's really neat. I enjoy Woodbine quite a bit. Let's move on to Matt Klopfer. Apologize if I screw up your name. How do you handicap workouts? Specifically, what about the workouts other than consistency shows you improving or established form? So this might not be the answer that you're looking for necessarily, Matt, but for me, workouts for the most part are just sort of there's too much sort of, inspector work that needs to go into really finding something crazy. Someone that is brilliant at it though is Illman. Illman can go through and he'll go and find that certain trainers, they have certain patterns, and going back through the archives, if a horse doesn't have a 6 furlong workout leading into the race, they generally don't run well, or whatever it may be. He's great at finding all that stuff. I look at it much more from, I don't want to say call it the Captain Obvious standpoint, but for me, I want to go and see, and it's an angle that's worked for me in the past, and I'm sure it'll work again in the future. If you see a giant difference, so let's say a horse has been working 5/8 of a mile pretty consistently in 1 minute and 2, okay, 1:02. And there all of a sudden is an equipment change, one way or the other, blinkers on, blinkers off, leading into this race. And you see just a stark sort of change in the pattern, where you've gone from 5/8 and 1:02 to 5/8 in 1 minute flat, or 5/8 and 59 and 4, and you see those consistently. That to me signifies that something changed here. And it's an educated guess. But you are looking at it saying, you know what, logical reasoning would tell me, well, all of a sudden, what has changed? You're showing up with a different equipment situation this time around for this race this afternoon. You've not had them, or you've had them all in your other races prior, but these 3 workouts leading into this race are just completely different than what you're accustomed to doing. That to me is usually when I'll go through and I'll say, you know what, this is something that we're going to have to take an eye on. If you want to look at it the other way, we've made clear about it. Certain trainers are a little bit cagey about workouts. Some will not only have a published work every 13 or 14 days, which, with those ones, you got to be a little bit more wary of as far as something like this, the assessment that I'm about to give. If there is any sort of a gap in the workout tab leading into a race, that's a major red flag to me, even if it's only a week. If you miss a workout, it's usually not a good sign. I mean, that's stating the obvious. But that consistency leading into, especially, I don't want to say especially, but leading into any kind of a big race, a graded stakes race, because it's almost to be expected with some of the lower level claimers, or even the mid-level claimers, where, you know what, they have a little bit of a hiccup, give them a week, they'll come back in 2 weeks, and they'll go out there and they'll run their race. With the bigger horses leading into a grade 1 or a grade 2 or whatever it may be, any kind of a hiccup in the plan is not something I want to see. So always look, when you're going through and you see the workouts down the bottom of your racing form, if you see a workout on, I'm making it up, June 1st, June 8th, June 15th, then nothing on the 22nd, and then you see one come up, let's say, June 29 or June 30, and then the race is leading in the beginning of July, that to me is a red flag. That would be an instance where I would, depending on if there was anyone else in the race that I found interesting, might be enough to get me off of a horse that I either liked or a horse that I thought was going to take a fair share of money. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an inkling. The way that I look at workouts, I'm not somebody that goes through and sifts and tries to pair up and see those sort of things. If I look at the DRF Clocker report and I see that a certain horse has worked with another horse, I'll go and see what that other horse looks like on paper. I can go in and find out, is this a maiden, a first-time starter that most recently worked with a horse that came back and they ran and they earned a 34 buyer? Well, guess what? If that's the case, probably not going to be too concerned with that one. Or on the flip side, did this horse work head and head with a horse that typically earns buyers in the high 70s, and this is a 2-year-old first-time starter? Something along those lines. Those are things, those are little tidbits that you can use, and that can go a long way into helping you out and make, ultimately, whatever your decisions are for your wagering. Hope that was a decent enough answer for you, Matt. And the last one we'll go over here for the preview edition. This one comes in from Alex Kibrick. A little bit of a wordy one. Can you talk about how you handicap horses coming off races where they got wide trips? For instance, Owendale in the Preakness. If he gets Wow's trip, meaning War of Will, I think he's a winner. Game winner in the Derby, who I think ran the second best race, is definitely in top echelon of 3-year-olds, and Tacitus in the Belmont. Obviously, post position is a factor with game winner and Tacitus in the Derby and Belmont respectively, but there's no reason Owendale should have been as wide as he was in the Preakness. Watching Ohio Derby and seeing Owendale down on the inside just makes me think how crucial ground loss is. Just wanted to get your thoughts. Thanks. Ground loss is absolutely critical, I think, particularly in dirt racing. Dirt racing, I said it with that whole thing with War of Will leading into the Preakness, where the connections were a little bit concerned about the inside. Unless the rail is dead, inside's never a bad place to be. It's the shortest way around the track. Geometrically, there was no shorter way around than being down on the rail. Now you bring, I think the reason, and this is one of those things where I understand what you're saying with Owendale in the Preakness. If he pulls that sort of trip, he wins. Well, guess what? I'm not trying to say this in like a condescending way. Most horses that pull that kind of trip are going to ultimately have a leg up on somebody else. If you can just scrape the paint the whole way, you're going to be in good shape. The danger with that, especially with a horse like Owendale, is if you're doing that, you're now at the mercy of the two things that we always talk about. You're at the mercy of pace and trip, where, sure, you can glue yourself to the rail and everything is all well and good, but when the real running begins, are you going to get lucky enough where the pace is hot enough for you to have something to close at? And are you going to be able to sift your way through? Because there are going to be horses in front of you that are stopping. And now you got to weave through and you got to hope that you get just a dream sort of situation. That's why you get so many horses and riders that will angle out 5-6 paths off the rail, rounding the far turn, where the last thing you want to do is lose momentum. Momentum is critical, absolutely critical, and whether it's dirt, turf, synthetic, doesn't matter. The last thing you want to do when your horse is making a run is get them stopped or have them have to take up at some point, because it's just so hard to regain that momentum and regain that run. So I do understand what you're saying if you flipped the script and War of Will was wider as opposed to Owendale. No question about it. But I don't know that it's as easy to say, well, if this, then that. Because if you flip the trips, Owendale has to deal with more traffic than a horse like War of Will does. War of Will, and that's the beauty of tactical speed. Tactical speed, you can basically more or less make your trip. You want to sit the pocket, you want to press on the outside, you want to go to the front, whatever it may be, as opposed to a horse like Owendale who comes from farther out of it. You're always going to be at the mercy of pace and trip. A horse like Game Winner in the Kentucky Derby, he was impossibly wide. And if he comes back, and I hope he does, for a race like the Travers, he's very interesting. It's hard not to be interested in him because he was as wide as he was. You bring up Tacitus in the Belmont. The other thing that you need to keep in mind, too, with a horse like Tacitus in the Belmont, yes, the wide trip was the difference strictly from a ground loss standpoint. But then when you also factor in that the inside is where you wanted to be on the racetrack, Tacitus's race is even better than it looks at face value. So those are all things that need to be factored in. Ground loss is critical. I personally think it's one of those things, if you like a closer, just my own personal preference, if I have a closer and they're starting to make a run, I'm okay giving up some ground. I'm okay going out into the clear because I just don't want them to get stopped. Rather than have them try to shoot up the inside and hope it all just works out. Because more often than not, it won't. Especially in grass racing. I'd much rather be 7-8 wide coming off the far turn and have whomever it is down on the inside who is just sitting in the pocket, taking advantage, getting the jump on me. If I think I've got a better turn of foot, I'd rather be making sure that I'm out in the clear. I don't care if I'm going to be out at the grandstand. I just want to be able to go with my run. I don't want to have to stop and have any of that kind of stuff because there is nothing more aggravating than thinking that you're coming with a run or your horse is running and you get stopped cold. That is the most aggravating situation that you can find. But your point is accurate and well taken. I mean, ground loss is a major thing that needs to be factored in. I find it more important, not necessarily... it's obvious enough, the examples I just laid out, the sort of closing situation. Ground loss to me is more important when it's a scenario of, let's say, the second and third best horses are sitting 2-3, and you have the pace setter down on the rail, the second horse is in the 2-path, third horse is right there with the second horse in the 3-path. Well, say they kind of go all the way around in a situation like that extra path or two that the outside horse needs to carry as opposed to the middle horse, that could make the difference. And that, to me, that's when ground loss, you're always, and that's why those races, whether it's Santa Anita, where you got the 1 mile races where you break going into the first turn, boy, outside draw, you are way up against it. Just no matter what, whether you're a closer, you're a speed horse, whatever it may be, because you can't help but be wide going into the first turn. Same goes for Gulfstream Park. That's why we see it all the time. The idea that if you are breaking from, like post 9 and out on the main track, you're screwed. Good luck. You need to be so much the best that it's very unlikely unless you can just streak to the front and clear off. Just because ground loss is such a major important thing. But again, relating it to like grass racing, I would much rather give up some ground on the far turn to make sure that I can still come with my run as opposed to try to weave through traffic and just hope that I get lucky. So hopefully that was a little bit of what you were looking for, Alex. Thank you for the response. Thank you to everybody that put in responses for each of the past 2 weeks. I know I didn't get to all of them, but I do appreciate the feedback. Questions, comments, concerns beneath the video player on YouTube or directly to me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. I'm curious what your thoughts are about these things that I've touched on here this week. Let me know, agree, disagree, whatever else the case may be. However you listen, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, or the Racing Forums YouTube. I keep saying that, or the Racing Forums YouTube channel. That's what YouTube is at the top. You get the gist. There's a lot of stuff going on this Thursday afternoon. However you listen to it, please rate, review, and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated. I'll be back Tuesday next week, not Monday. I have a golf tournament. I have to take that day off. So I'm going to move things over. I will be working on Tuesday next week, not Monday. We'll be going over the recap edition, take a look at some of these races, and get ready for bigger and better things to come ahead of us. We've got Stars and Stripes next weekend. We've got Saratoga and Del Mar opening shortly thereafter. So good luck this weekend, however you play, whatever you play, and wherever you play. It's been the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show.